So let's have a look at what we're going to talk about today. We can start off with Facebook. A few interesting areas, including shops. There's a way of getting quicker likes, particularly on Android phones, and looking at ways to manage your page. Twitter, there's been a lot of changes in Twitter. Probably most of actually this morning is going to be used up talking about Twitter. Lots of big changes, including their new scheduling tool. Some interesting ideas on lead generation and lists as well. LinkedIn, again, has been going through some big changes, including a really, really significant change on the algorithm which decides who sees your posts. Then there's Instagram, they've launched guides, and then we're going to look at some others, including some big news involving TikTok. And also, probably my favorite news of the day, which is the last one of the day, just keep you hanging on, and that's what's happening on WhatsApp. Okay, so that's where we're going to be going today. Let's start off with who am I? So this is me, I'm Mark Saxby, and this is me and my family. So my wife Kerry, we got married 22 years ago. We're supposed to be going to the Monaco Grand Prix for our 22nd wedding anniversary this year. Instead, we were at home. Not quite as good, but there we go. And I've got 3 children. I've got Sam, who's 15, and Kate, who's 13, and Amy, who's my surprise 6-year-old. If you're considering ever having a surprise third child, I would say I'd highly recommend it. Very, very good. She's my favorite, but don't tell the others. I'm a journalist by profession. I spent 20 years in journalism, was in newspapers and magazines, went to work for the BBC and ITV, spent the last 11 years of my journalistic career working as a journalist at BBC, working in radio, loved it. This is me doing a bit of TV at the Manchester Commonwealth Games. And it was while I was at the BBC, I learned how to use Twitter to find news stories in terms of using it in a social sense. So I've been on Facebook for quite a long time, but then suddenly my eyes were open to how you could really use Twitter to engage people and win them over. Started Sage Social 9.5 years ago, so we were one of the first specialist social media agencies in the country, and still are one of the very few who still exist just to do social media, don't tag on other things. This is our team. This is actually our 2nd floor garden in our offices in Derby, because we're on the 2nd floor. Clearly, we can't have a proper garden. These guys are our amazing team that we have there. We work with loads of companies. We've trained about more than 3,000 people. We've generated more than £2.4 million in sales for us and our clients. And this is just a few lists of the few of the companies that we've worked with so far. And I also run, I'm sure you all do, an international campaign group against the evils of quiche. The phrase, our slogan is "Ban the flan." Very important. Quiche, of course, is responsible for all the evils of the world. If you want to join me, brothers and sisters, you're very welcome. Okay, so that's enough of the frippery. Let's talk about what's actually the substance. So let's look at Facebook, first of all, the biggest network. We really like this one. This is an interesting thing that's been tested on Android phones. So for those who know about the feature on Facebook, when people like your post, you can then invite them to like the page. And now some of our accounts that we manage for some of our clients, sometimes they'll be getting 100, 200 likes in the space of a few hours over Facebook, and we've got to go through every single one manually, clicking invite alongside all their names to get them to invite the page. Well, now Android is testing a new thing called Invite All, where you can actually click invite. You can click the Invite All button and invites all of them all in one go. So real time saver, and we're looking forward to it, particularly since I've actually been spammed out a couple of times by Facebook banning me from inviting anybody because I've been inviting people too quickly. So this will be very useful. Stop me getting in trouble with Facebook, and nobody wants to get into trouble with Facebook. One other thing happening in Facebook is their new shops facility. So quite interesting with the shops facility, because there are shops on Facebook, and it has been for some time, but it seems that what they're going to be doing is really upscaling it into more of an e-commerce platform. So what's interesting about it is, first of all, it can be integrated with your Facebook and with your Instagram profiles. But also you can customize it now with your brand images, you can choose what products you want, you can choose your colors. So it's becoming a lot more in line with you rather than in line with Facebook. And customers will now be able to message businesses through the page and through WhatsApp and through Messenger and Instagram Direct. And also what's going to be really interesting is that they're going to also bring in the ability to buy directly through these Facebook shops. Well, now you've got it directly to your website. Facebook are hoping then now to bring this in so you can actually buy through the page itself. So we think that's really interesting. It's on a gradual rollout, so you may not have it yet, and it's starting with the businesses that use Instagram profile shops. So keep an eye out for that if that's something that'd be useful for your business. Okay, next thing is Messenger. So what's obviously with Messenger, you might have your own personal profile Messenger, and then you might also be responding to messages on behalf of your business. Now, what they're doing with the Messenger app is they're integrating the two together, so you can now switch between your company Messenger and your personal Messenger on your phone. So we think that's, again, quite a useful little time-saving device that they're going to be bringing in. It's all part of Facebook and the way they're trying to integrate all their messaging apps, with Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram Direct. Let's look at Twitter. So again, some really interesting things going on with Twitter. They seem to be evolving at quite a fast rate after really quite a few years of not really moving forwards at all. So let's look at replies first of all. So this is an interesting one. So this is where you can now choose who you want to reply to your tweets. So you think, well, why would you want to do that? It's a public forum. If you're on Twitter, surely you want everyone to respond to your tweets. Well, it depends on the kind of content you're putting out. Clearly, if you're putting out a customer service message, or you're talking to one particular person, you don't want others to jump on the bandwagon. We think this is a really, really useful new tool that you can use if you're using customer service. But what I like about it, it just gives you a little bit more control. It can still be retweeted. It can still, so you don't have all the power, but it is a step forward in terms of customer service particularly. This is another thing which I think is really interesting. So on Facebook, when you're using it, if you want to use Messenger, it kind of has a little bit of a pop-up on the right-hand side of your screen if you're using it on the desktop. Now, what they're also doing with Twitter is they're currently researching, this has been spotted by Matt Navarra, they're currently testing a pop-up of direct messages on your Twitter desktop. So you better see your DMs alongside your normal tweets. So again, this should be really useful because often they're a bit hidden away by the little notification button. So it'd be useful to have things a bit more obvious and be able to switch between the two a lot more quickly. So we think that's a good little tool as well. This is another interesting one. So I don't know about you guys, but every now and again, you might see a tweet from somebody. It might be a linking to a blog on their website. And you think, oh, I want to be able to show that, I support them. So you'll retweet it. Or what LinkedIn are going to be trying now is they're actually going to say to people, are you sure you want to retweet this? Because they'll be able to tell you've not clicked on the link first. So this will be really interesting on several point of view. One is that in terms of personal use, it means then that you can't be blamed for saying, actually, I didn't read the whole blog and I retweeted it. But also means from a business point of view, I suspect it will mean less retweets for businesses because I think some people will do retweet without reading blogs. And I can see it. I see it, when we do a tweet, sometimes you'll see lots of retweets on a blog, but yet nobody's clicked on the blog, because you can see that through the Twitter analytics. So this, I think, will be very interesting and will certainly mean that we have to work a lot harder on ensuring people read our content and our blogs rather than just expecting retweets because they love us as companies. So let's look at Twitter scheduling. So they've talked about this for a long time, but finally they've brought it in. So yes, you can schedule tweets through Twitter just by that little button on the bottom of your Twitter bar. So this can be done on desktop at the moment, and you can choose when you want it to go out. So here's kind of the parameters. You've got obviously the month, day, year, and the hour and the minute. And when you do choose to put it out, when you go into your drafts, you'll see a new column there called Scheduled, where you'll be able to see the tweets that are going out, and you can edit them and delete them and do that sort of thing. Now, the key thing about scheduling in all networks is that you don't allow scheduling to ruin your life. It's very easy to just go onto Twitter or Facebook or any other network and just schedule tweets and then never really go in it live. And we still find that it's the live tweeting, it's the live post on any of the networks which always does the best. That often scheduling is part of your armory, but it's not the whole thing. There's a great blog on our website called Why Social Media is Like Jazz. If you want to read about how to integrate scheduling with live messaging and daily posting all at the same time. Lists. So we've been using lists for quite a long time on Twitter, but now we've heard some rumors that they're going to be doing some big things with it, improving their topics and list features. And we've also been hearing about the potential of a list discovery and directory. So it used to be several years ago, if you wanted to find a list on Twitter, you could go into Google and do a search on Twitter lists, and you would find the lists that were kind of a bit hidden away on Google. So if you've not used lists, it's a way to kind of categorize the people you're following or people you want to follow. It was a way to follow people without them actually realizing you're following them. We've been using it for years as a way for if a client, for instance, says to us that they want us to talk to architects or talk to lawyers, we will find lots of accounts, add them to a list, and then we'll then dip into that list and see what they're doing. And so we think this new maybe way to discover lists means that you can also find other people's lists, which means then if you're looking for accountants, you don't necessarily need to create your own accountants list because other lists will become discoverable on Twitter. So we think this is really useful. Here's an example of one we've used. This is with Thomas, one of our newest clients. So we had Thomas on a list with a series of other independent financial advisors, and we just engaged with him in conversation. So when Tom tweeted about the more robust financial plan, we then jumped in and had a conversation with him, asked him about whether he'd be interested in chatting. He said yes. We've got a Zoom sorted out within 2 weeks. We've now been working with Tom, and what a great client he is. And if you need any wealth management advice, talk to Tom Skinner. There's a good plug for you, Tom. So that's a thank you for letting us be in the presentation. So really powerful stuff on Twitter, and lists will really help you do that to keep a bit more organized. But it's using Twitter again the right way, not just by putting out tweets and hoping somebody will see it, but actually thinking, I want to use it to engage with people. So getting on to LinkedIn. Before we do it, I've got another quick poll. So here's a poll for you. So the poll here is, do you feel that your company has made the most of social media during lockdown? So the options are yes, no, or unsure. So do you feel your company has made the most of social media during lockdown? Interesting results so far. And I'd probably say I'm not surprised. It's been interesting watching a lot of companies go very quiet on social media during lockdown. I think a lot of them just didn't know what to post, didn't know what to say, didn't know how to really get engaged in the mood. Great, let's make those results live. So 45% of you said no, that your company didn't make most of social media during lockdown. 38% yes, and 17% were unsure. So really interesting in terms of that use. And I think I've been asked to speak on quite a lot of podcasts and videos about what do companies need to do following lockdown. And one of the things I would say is you need to learn from what didn't go well in lockdown and actually push forward and into the new era. But I'd also say as well, this shows the importance of having a social media strategy in the first place, because if there's a strategy in place, therefore then you would have carried on through lockdown, and therefore then you probably would have made the most of it. But if there's no strategy and you're trying to play catch up, it's always hard to play catch up in those situations. Great. Okay, let's carry on. So let's look at LinkedIn. So this is a formula to get you excited. If you're a mathematician, I do not understand a word of it, but what I do understand is it's all about dwell time. So typically on LinkedIn, you put a post onto LinkedIn, and LinkedIn will show it to a certain number of people to see whether they engage with that post or not. They then measure those engagements to decide whether it's going to be seen by a wider group of people. But what they found was that a lot of the engagement wasn't really of high value. So they brought in this thing called dwell time. So what that means is that when you put a post on LinkedIn and people see it on the feed and they look at it and they scroll past, it means then if they don't pause, therefore then it's seen as low value content. So if somebody stops on your post, clicks on the see more, opens the photograph, reads the words, reads the comments, then all that does, it says to LinkedIn, this is a post of value, it's getting dwell time, therefore we're going to show it to more people. So what that means is it's really, really important to ensure that your post, one, stops people in their tracks as they go through, but two, that it has real value about it. That it makes people think, it makes people watch, it makes people look at photos, it generates comments. The best post can be seen by thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but if it's not getting that dwell time, if it's not getting that engagement, then unfortunately there's no point doing it at all, because most posts hardly get seen by anybody on LinkedIn because unfortunately the quality is too low. So really worth thinking about what are you posting on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Live, so interesting thing about LinkedIn Live. So LinkedIn Live is now going to be integrated into LinkedIn events. So a lot of you will have been invited to this event through LinkedIn events. I think we had about 84 people who actually accepted our invitation to come to the event. So we find LinkedIn events really useful, but very underused on LinkedIn at the moment. It's not perfect in that you can't still, you still got to go through a process of signing people up properly rather than just doing it through the LinkedIn event. But we think the fact that they're integrating lives in there means that then we can do a LinkedIn event and stream it live to those people. But also as well, what I think is really interesting is you're now going to get a video tab on your company page, where your videos that you've streamed live will then appear in there for other people to look at later at. And also you can limit the viewers of people to people who have either signed up or people who are followers of your company page. So a few little interesting things there, I think, with LinkedIn Live. Polls. So polls interesting there. That's come in over the last month or so. What's really interesting about them, I think particularly, is that when you do a poll, if it's a successful poll, your connections get an alert to say that you've posted a poll. So what we found with this poll particularly here was an interesting one. So we had 77 votes, and we found the people who voted on the poll were a lot of people who hadn't engaged with my post for quite a long time. Now, if you do a rubbish poll and you only get 1 or 2 votes, unfortunately, all your connections aren't going to get a notification. So you've still got to play the algorithm and still got to do a good poll, but there is real potential. And then it depends on what you're doing with that poll. So I've got here, obviously, 77 people who've all engaged in my poll, which means then I can then go to all 77 of them and ask questions and start a conversation with them off the back of the poll. So again, using it strategically, really, really important. Something that I see very underused at the moment, LinkedIn have brought in a restriction on the number of invitations that you can send via your company page to invite your connections to like your page. It's now been restricted to just 100. So really important to be strategic on them, not to own, and that's to share between all the admins, and make sure you use them properly, but also make sure you do use 100 a month, because I'm hardly getting any connection requests to join companies. And even when I do, they're not particularly well done anyway. So if you're going to use it well. And I'm just going to go on to look on to Instagram next, and guides. So guides is a new thing that Instagram brought in. It's a new tab they're putting onto profiles, which is going to allow businesses and creators to highlight the recommendations and tips and other kind of serial content. So, and it will be guide. It's going to be called a guides tab. It's going to be findable on Explore, and it's a way to categorize things if you're going through kind of a series of like how-to guides or comments or helpful tips, and you can add more comments and helpful tips to it. So, because it's going to appear on the Explore tab, I think this could be really important for being found on Instagram. Let's go on to the final 4. So the quick look on Messenger, going back to it again. This is the new thing that's been spotted by Jay Manchung Wong. She's a bit of an reverse engineer. She finds all these little secrets of things that are going to be going on with social media. And what we know is that Messenger is working on a hit me up sticker, which, as you can imagine, sounds quite American. I don't think I've ever used the phrase "hit me up" in my life, but I will be now. Oh yeah. So hit me up. When you put "hit me up" on a story, if you click on it, it then allows you to send a direct message straight away, a personal message straight away. So it could be really, really useful if you want to get people to engage with you and buy from you, and just to have that conversation with you. TikTok. So some news from TikTok, which would be bad news for a lot of companies, is that before, with TikTok, if you wanted to use some music, you could use any music you wanted to that was on TikTok, and it could be singles, it could be music in the charts. Now, unfortunately, they're restricting it just to a library of music that is not commercial for businesses. So unfortunately, if you like to use the latest music on your TikToks, you're now going to be restricted. It's not restricted for personal users. Unfortunately, it's just for business users. Anybody who advertises on Snapchat, just a quick nod to the fact that Snapchat now have a helpful video on how to reorientate your videos, so to make them portrait rather than landscape. So that can be found in the Manage Ads segment of the Ads Manager app. And finally from me, WhatsApp, and I think it's the most exciting news of all. You can now send and receive money through WhatsApp, which I think is a real breakthrough when it comes to social media. Unfortunately, it's currently only available in Brazil, so you have to move there to use it, but hopefully it will be soon over in the UK. We expect it will be soon. And how it works is it's free for consumers to use. So if they want to buy something from a business, they can use it for free. And then businesses are paying a 3.99% processing fee. And it's going to work by like a 6-digit PIN or a fingerprint to be able to complete the transactions. And you use it by linking up your WhatsApp to a Visa or MasterCard or a credit or a debit card. So we think this is really interesting. It's using a system called Facebook Pay. So we think this is just the start of things to come, that we better use Facebook Pay across all your devices, across Messenger, across Facebook, and on WhatsApp. And I think this could be really, really significant when it comes to being able to make your businesses more open, to make it easier for people to buy from. So that's it from what's new in social media and, from social media. I was going to say and SEO, but we've not even heard from Hugo yet. Sorry, Hugo. So we're going to hand over to Hugo in a minute. Again, just to remind you, there are feedback forms on there. So if you do happen to have to leave early, then please fill in a feedback form before you go. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Hugo, and then please put some questions in the chat as well.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Mark. That was really interesting, particularly the bit about dwell time on Twitter, because it's a similar approach in SEO actually, where Google is looking at websites and kind of how users engage with websites is part of the algorithm. So it's interesting to see that that's on Twitter as well. I actually like quiche, so I'm not really sure why you're against quiche. I wish we could do a poll of people here to see if they like quiche. If people prefer quiche, then hopefully we can start a different alliance and go from there. But I'll go ahead and share my screen now because I'm conscious of time and I want to leave time at the end for questions. Fantastic. Right, you should now be able to see my screen. Perfect. And let me just go from here. Perfect, cool. So what's new in SEO? So before jumping into the world of SEO and everything that's been going on over the last few months, I wanted to introduce myself to those who don't already know me and give you a bit of background on me. So this is me, this is my face, looking quite youthful and energized pre-lockdown, obviously. Things have changed quite a lot and I feel like I've aged at least 5 years. And as you can see there, I joined Impression in 2018. So I've been working in the world of SEO now for around 2 years after graduating from university. And my role at Impression is primarily to support SEO strategists, so our more experienced SEOs, in delivering strategies to our clients. So strategies across B2C, B2B businesses, and lead generation, e-commerce. I've worked on a wide range of businesses, pretty much most things under the sun, everything from kind of international barbecue retailers to data management companies operating in the UK. So over this period of 2 years, I've gathered a few insights in SEO and how that can be used to increase visibility online, and hopefully I can share some of those insights with you today. But the main kind of updates I want to discuss are updates that have occurred in the last 2 or 3 months, updates since the last iteration of what's new in SEO and social media. And the running order of my talk is going to be across these 5 different topics. So I'll start off with a bit of information around the latest Google core algorithm updates, which I'm sure many of you will already be aware of. And the second discussion point is going to be around Google's latest ranking factor, which is called the page experience metric. I then jump into some information around Google My Business, which is going to be hopefully relevant to a lot of SMEs attending today. And then we're going to have a very quick poll, similar to Mark's. And then we'll round off with some more information around free listings in Google Shopping. And then finally, a bit of information around the guest posting debate going on at the moment in the world of SEO, which is relevant to backlinks as a pillar of organic strategies. So I'll start off then with the core algorithm updates, which occurred on May 4th of this year. And it was the latest core algorithm update that Google's rolled out. For those who don't know, core algorithm updates occur several times a year. You can look at them as kind of broad refreshes of Google's algorithm, where Google is going to try and improve the way that it's ranking websites and trying to make the results better for the users. Google makes updates to its algorithm on a daily basis, hundreds of minor updates a day, but these kind of core updates are seen as more significant, and they often cause quite significant ranking volatility across a wide range of industries. And certainly in the UK, following this update on May 4th, we saw a lot of websites decreasing or increasing in rankings. Unfortunately, Google is not divulging information around what it changed in its algorithm. It's trying to keep it a secret because it doesn't want people to kind of manipulate the algorithm. But as SEOs, we can kind of deduce what Google was trying to do by looking at the websites that saw increases or decreases in performance, and also by looking at kind of the information that Google's put out there around what it is looking for generally in terms of organic search. So several kind of notable SEOs have run some reports in recent weeks and months. And one of these people was Mary Haynes, who's a prominent SEO expert out of the US. And she was looking at several kind of big websites that she works with and drew two major insights, which hopefully are relevant for you. So the first of those insights is that, according to Mary Haynes, she suspects that Google has improved its ability to serve relevant results to users and basically understand the expertise, authority, and trust of a website better than previously. When we're talking about expertise, authority, and trust, or EAT, this is kind of Google's big driver at the moment when it's looking at what websites are good websites and what websites are bad websites. So in Google's mind, websites that demonstrate signals of expertise, authority, or trust are websites that will be more relevant for the search results. You can demonstrate expertise, authority, and trust in a variety of ways, but primarily it's things like having very in-depth content, citing your sources. If you're like an e-commerce website, if you're listing very clear customer review information, if you're just leaving reviews on the website, anything that's going to improve how much a user trusts your website and how your website is viewed in terms of authority in the broader context of your industry, then that is going to benefit you from a ranking perspective. So Mary Haynes suspects that Google has, in this latest update, changed its algorithm using machine learning to really understand what people are trying to get at when they're typing in a search query. So machine learning essentially is Google's way of understanding the nuance of language, which it previously couldn't do. Back in the day, in the world of SEO, let's say 8-10 years ago, often you could simply stuff your page with loads of keywords and build loads of, spammy backlinks to your page. And because Google's algorithm was quite not very sophisticated, let's say, your website could be ranking above others. However, Google has obviously made its algorithm a lot more complicated, a lot more complex, and it is now able to actually understand what a user is trying to find when they're typing in a certain search query. There are certain examples where previously to the update, if someone typed in Brazilian traveler to US needs visa, the results that were showing up were results for US people traveling to Brazil wanting a visa, when really the intent behind the search was clearly Brazilian travelers wanting to go to the US with a visa. But because the search query was quite long and complicated, Google didn't really understand which website should be showing up. But because of machine learning, it's now better able to understand the nuance of that sentence, which is going to be more and more important as the way that people search online is changing. People are taking a more conversational approach when they're searching online. People are using things like voice search more and more. So Google's basically better able to match intent to websites. So Mary Haynes has basically said that EAT is become much more important as a result of this. The second aspect of the update and what it tried to achieve was that, according to Mary Haynes, backlinks have reduced in importance, at least slightly. So in terms of SEO, we often think of the three pillars. So we think of technical SEO, which is essentially the coding on the website, how easy it is for crawlers to find all the content. We have content, which is clearly what's actually written on the page, all the imagery, videos, and then you have backlinks. So backlinks work as votes of confidence. So if your website has lots of backlinks to it, Google understands those backlinks as signals of your website being authoritative in the space and should therefore be receiving higher rankings. However, in recent years, people have manipulated this aspect of the ranking algorithm, building spammy backlinks or building backlinks purely for the purposes of SEO rather than trying to actually benefit users and generate value. So according to Mary Haynes, she has seen some websites that relied heavily on certain types of links decrease in rankings because those links actually depreciated in how much of a ranking signal Google was looking at them for. So two major updates to be aware of. Obviously, we can't say this is what it was for sure, but I think in general, in terms of where Google is going, it certainly seems likely that EAT and backlinks are going to be core focuses of that. In terms of what you need to do for your own websites, if you have been negatively affected by the update, it's carrying out some kind of competitor audit of the industry and understanding which websites won, which websites lost, and why. So if you find that your competitor is now ranking significantly better than you, what is it about their site that has probably led to this? You know, is it that their content adds more than your content? You know, if it's an e-commerce site, do they go into more information about the product? Do they add reviews on the site? Are they providing really clear customer kind of payment information? Do they have more backlinks, you know, backlinks from authoritative places? Things like that will allow you to understand what it is about those websites that you should then replicate on your website to improve rankings moving forward. I also recommend taking a look at Google Search Quality Evaluator guidelines, because what Google is doing when it's putting out algorithm updates is that it's asking third-party individuals to basically review whether the algorithm update is working as it should. So they have individuals, anonymous people around the world who look at websites and basically assess how good they are to see if the algorithm is working. And Google has provided guidelines for what those people are looking for. So if you take a look at the guidelines, you can see exactly what the kind of questions people are asking when they're evaluating websites. And it may be that you're asking these questions to yourself as you analyze your own website, and you identify things for improvement. So definitely two things to take a look at there. The second update is around Google's latest ranking factor. So on May 28th, Google announced that it will be introducing a new ranking signal called Page Experience. This new signal will consist of the core Web Vitals and existing page metrics like mobile friendliness. So for a while now, Google has been looking at things around page experience when it's considering which websites should rank, things like mobile friendliness, things like safe browsing, whether your page or website is on HTTPS rather than HTTP, and things like pop-ups. So if your website has loads of pop-ups, that's going to be contributing to a negative user experience, and Google will value your site less as a result. However, it's important to note that this new algorithm update or ranking signal won't come into place until 2021, and Google is going to let us know 6 months prior that it will be rolled out. So it's not around currently, but it is something that we should all be looking at our sites for as soon as possible. What is significant about this new ranking signal is that it's focusing on 3 new metrics. And these metrics are largest contentful paint, first input delay, and cumulative layout shift. So largest contentful paint is a metric which looks at how long it takes the largest element on the page to be loaded in and shown to the user. So in many cases, the largest element on the page will be the image, just because the file size is so large compared to other elements on the page. So Google is going to look at how long it takes that element to be loaded in and shown to the user. And if it takes a certain amount of time, it takes longer than 1 second, that is a signal that it isn't a good user experience. First input delay is how long, or the time between a user clicking onto something on the page, such as a drop-down menu, and the page actually responding to that and performing the action that the user is trying to do. If someone clicks on the drop-down menu and it takes several seconds, that is going to be a sign that the page is not delivering the value that a user wants. And there's been many studies over the years that if pages take many seconds or even 2+ seconds to load, then the percentage of people leaving the site increases significantly. So they are also looking at first input delay. The third metric is cumulative, that's a tricky word to say, layout shift. So this is looking at how much the elements on the page actually move as it's loaded in. The idea being, if someone is reading or lands on the page and wants to start reading a section of text, but suddenly that section of text moves much further down the page because other elements have been loaded in, that user is going to have a negative experience on the page. So Google is looking at that and seeing kind of the ratio of movement on the page as a signal as to whether it's a good user experience as well. So in terms of the actions then that we can all take from this, the first thing is to become familiar with those 3 terms. There's loads of information out there, but hopefully I provided a brief description of what those are. And then we can actually look at the Core Web Vitals report in Google Search Console. So you may have seen that what was previously the page speed report in Google Search Console is now the Core Web Vitals report. So you can actually see directly from Google how it values your website's pages according to those 3 metrics. And you can immediately see if there's any problems. And then you can go ahead from there and work with developers to kind of assess what needs to be fixed ahead of next year when it does get rolled out. Often it's things like deferring CSS, deferring JavaScript. With the imagery, it might be about condensing the imagery, removing certain types of imagery. If you have loads of pop-ups on the page, that's obviously going to be something that you should perhaps revise and change as well. And you can test it in real time. So once you work with developers or your SEO agency, you can make the fixes and see whether Google is revaluing or reevaluating that page according to those 3 metrics. So definitely one to be aware of in the near future. The third update is Google My Business. So I'm conscious that many people attending today are SMEs, and obviously with everything that's been going on in the world, SMEs have been quite badly affected, and Google has recognized this and has tried to help them as much as possible in providing information about their operating hours and just any other information about how they're handling the crisis. So one of the main ways that people can do this is through Google My Business, which is a free-to-use platform for anyone, and it basically allows businesses to upload information about their business. So business name, address, phone number, kind of services offered. All of this is something you can upload online. And then when someone is searching in your area, say someone wanted to find cafe near me, in the search result, they'll be shown a map pack where you have listings of businesses with the business names and reviews and things like that. And that map pack is pulling in that information from Google My Business. So Google has added loads of new features to Google My Business in kind of as a result of coronavirus and everything that's been going on with lockdown. Some of these things include marking your business or certain shops as temporarily closed. Previously, you could only mark your business as open or closed. By marking it as temporarily closed, you open up the possibility of opening it up in the future. And also your business stays visible online. So if someone wanted to find your business and you'd mark it as completely closed, your page or Google My Business page would be lost. However, if you mark it as temporarily closed, you're telling users that you will be open again soon. You can also post updates or publish updates about how you're managing the lockdown. So if you wanted to post something allowing people who would find your Google My Business profile that you're opening again soon, or if you're opening, on a certain date, or if you want to post information around how you're keeping your staff and customers safe while reopening your stores, then that's something you can do in Google My Business. You can also add attributes to your page. So as you can see there in the image, you have dine-in, takeaway, and delivery. So say you're a food business or a pub, for let's say, and you can only offer takeaway and delivery but can't offer dine-in, then you can mark that now on Google My Business, which you couldn't do previously. And what they've done as well recently, very recently, is added more hours to Google My Business. So rather than just having the standard working hours of 9 to 10, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., let's say, you can now add specific hours when certain services are offered. So say you offered dine-in and takeaway from 10 a.m. through to 10 p.m., but you only offered delivery from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., you can now mark that on Google My Business. So again, you can kind of provide the most up-to-date information for your customer base. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that. I provided a link there in my slide. So if you wanted to go away and read some of that information from Google itself, then I would definitely recommend doing so. Great. Okay, now I believe this is time for a poll. So hopefully this is going to run similarly to Mark's one, but I would like to know how much of a priority SEO will be for you following lockdown. So will it be a high priority? Will it be about the same? Or will it be low priority? I've seen different approaches to digital marketing and SEO in particular with everything going on. So it'd be interesting getting that direct feedback from you. And I can see immediately there that for a lot of people, it is still very much a high priority. And for others, it's about the same. It's interesting seeing how digital marketing strategies are changing. I'm seeing a lot of people kind of pulling back on their paid campaigns and reinvesting that in SEO. Obviously, with demand being slightly less, it's probably a good time to invest in SEO, as that's kind of seen as the long-term strategy if you want to build your presence online. But now that things are kind of easing up, it's kind of evening out again. So let's stop it there. I think that's really good. High priority, majority of people, 52%, which is really good to hear. And obviously, it's a good sign, which is why you're attending today. Okay, let's carry on then. The fourth update is around free listings in Google Shopping. So Google announced in April that it would allow free listings in Google Shopping, starting with the US. Websites will gradually be able to list their products in the shopping tab organically for the first time in 8 years. So this is a very significant update, especially for e-commerce businesses. because as mentioned there, the shopping tab in Google has been a paid area for a long time now. So for those who don't know, when you type in a search on Google, say you typed in blanket or red shoes, whatever kind of search has a transactional intent behind it, at the top of the search result, you have different tabs. You'll have the main results, you'll have images, you'll have videos, things like that. I'm sure you maybe have seen it. But for those kind of queries, you also have shopping. And if you click onto shopping, up to now, it's been a paid area where people can set up campaigns through the Google Merchant account and then promote their products, like in the image shown there. However, what Google has now said is that this area will now primarily be an area for organic results, which is a really good thing to do and see, because it basically opens up the place for a lot more businesses, particularly SMEs, to push their products to users. In terms of kind of lockdown as well, I've seen a lot of businesses change their business models. A lot of businesses who previously relied heavily on promoting their products through retailers, through like third parties, have started to kind of look at their websites and see whether they can add e-commerce functionality to it. So becoming a direct-to-consumer business, and Google Shopping is definitely going to be a key area for that. One caveat is that it is not currently available in the UK, at least not across every industry. There are some reports that it is available in some limited capacity. So it'll be worthwhile looking at your industry and seeing whether it is available, but it will certainly be available by the end of the year. So it's definitely a good idea to get ahead of the curve and try and get your products on there. In terms of what you need to do, you can set up a Google Merchant account, which is free to set up. It's what you need if you wanted to run some paid shopping campaigns. You upload your product feed, so you can upload the types of products that you offer and the images around them. And then you opt into services across Google, which is essentially just a little box you need to tick, which allows you to be shown in Google Shopping. And then what you can do in Google Merchant account, which you couldn't do previously, is compare your paid clicks to your unpaid clicks. So you can see how much your paid campaigns are working for you in Google Shopping and how much your organic product listings are working for you, which is really good data to have. If you wanted more information about this, I've left links for 2 blogs there from my colleagues Luke and Liam, who are very, very well-experienced PPC experts who are far more knowledgeable about Google Shopping than I am. And those blogs kind of provide more information around how you can optimize for this and the opportunities that are there for you. So definitely recommend checking those blogs out. And then the 5th update is around guest posting. So in June of this year, Google spokesperson John Mueller, who's a very famous person in the world of SEO, he's probably not famous for most people, but for my kind of job, he is a very noticed and notable person. He reiterated the stance that all guest posts should have links, no followed, or rel sponsored. So what that means is when you're including a link to another website, you can mark it with an attribute, and you can mark it as no followed, which is basically telling Google that it shouldn't crawl it for ranking or crawling purposes. And then rel sponsored is essentially if you were to pay for a link or pay for an article to be published in a publication, then that publisher could mark that link as rel sponsored, which again would basically tell Google that it should not be considering that link for crawling and ranking. This has been Google's stance since 2017, since when it has been penalizing low quality guest blogging networks. The idea being basically that people who try to manipulate rankings by pulling out a lot of low quality guest posts with just links included throughout the posts are trying to manipulate Google, and that isn't providing useful information for anyone, and it isn't a sign of authority. So Google is looking at that and saying, okay, we're not going to value that anymore. And this kind of latest stance by John Mueller kind of reiterates Google's position on that. And, you know, tying into what Mary Haynes has kind of found in her report, it certainly seems that low quality links from kind of low quality guest posting websites is not going to be benefiting your SEO strategy as much as it may have been before. However, I'd really like to kind of reiterate that this doesn't mean that guest posting holds no value. Guest posting certainly holds value, particularly from very authoritative websites. And from personal experience and from just seeing what other SEOs are saying there in the industry, SEO, you know, guest posting does work. If you're being featured in very notable publications in your industry or national publications, national press, then, you know, the links from those places will be adding value to your site. And with Google placing so much, emphasis on EAT, the authority aspect of that does take into consideration links. So, while you're providing an article and there's a link into it, it doesn't mean that the article is not going to be considered. And also, just from a, not from an SEO standpoint, guest posting is beneficial as well, because it increases your brand awareness. It puts you in front of your target audience. So this slide is kind of reiterate that guest posting is valuable, and that it basically just shows that it shouldn't be the sole focus of your link building strategy in SEO. You really should be building a layered strategy, and Google's latest statement on this kind of cements that. So what that means in terms of layered strategies, it means building links in different ways. If you want to build your local SEO presence, you're looking at building links in directories. Guest posting obviously is a great way. Reactive comment opportunities, so journalists who want comments from industry experts for their articles, you provide a comment, and often links are included in that comment. That is a great way to build some links. And equally, just content marketing campaigns, so larger scale campaigns where you kind of leverage information that you've gathered, kind of any polls. If we were to do a massive poll around who likes quiche, I'm sure we could put some kind of content marketing campaign out there. And if that was picked up in different publications, by The Guardian, by BBC, and essentially went viral or semi-viral, Google is going to look at that and use it in its ranking algorithm. So, from first-hand experience, things like that do work. So it's about creating a layered strategy like that. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up everything from me. If you have any questions, we've left time at the end now to run through those, and hopefully I can do my best to answer those questions. Otherwise, if you want to talk to me directly, you can email me at hugo.whittaker@impression.co.uk, or you can find me on Twitter at Whittaker_Hugo. And just to kind of echo Mark's point as well, if you could fill in the feedback form, that would be really, really beneficial. Just to kind of get some more information on how these events, are going, and whether you'd like anything to be done slightly differently, or what you find works well. So yeah, I'll hand over back to you, Mark.
Great, thanks Hugo. That was really, really interesting. Always great information from Hugo and the team at Impression. Again, just to reiterate, please fill in the feedback form before you log off. Just to answer, I've got a few questions come in on the social media front, which I'll answer first. If you want to put your questions for Hugo in at the same time. So Faze asks, what do you think of the new voice tweets? So the voice tweets Faze referring to is a new feature that Twitter's bringing in, which is where you can record voice messages for Twitter. So they're 140 seconds long. And if you go over your 140 seconds, it then creates a second tweet and the third tweet and so on and so forth. So will they be used? Well, I'm not so sure how effective they'll be just yet, mostly because it seems to me that people on Twitter tend to like the way Twitter is, which is fast moving, being able to watch, read a quick tweet, watch a short video. I think having a voice message is going to have to be a really good writing to make somebody want to listen to it. And I suspect it's probably going to be more useful for if you've got a celebrity or somebody controversial speaking than a business. But I think with all these things, if you can do it well as a business, then there's certainly the potential there to make it work for you. Liz B asks, when might Facebook Pay arrive in the UK? Well, I'll just do the Gallic shrug. It could be any time, it could be never. We've seen these before where America and Facebook have said they're going to be doing something to the UK and never quite makes it. It's very hard to predict what countries and the order they do it in. They tend to roll it out depending on where they think, one in a kind of a testing area first, and then where they think they're going to be able to make more income from it. So it would make sense to me that if they were going to make income through Facebook Pay, and that would be part of Facebook Shops, that the UK would be pretty much high up, because we are one of the most active users of Facebook, and we spend a lot of money in our businesses on Facebook. So it makes sense that it would be pretty soon. So I would certainly hope it's going to be before the end of this year. David asked, a recent article on Forbes indicates LinkedIn groups are making a comeback. Do I think there is still a value there? They still have value for B2Bs who operate in a specialized field. I do. I think there is a lot of over-egging of the importance of LinkedIn groups, and LinkedIn did say, wow, we're going to bring it all back, it's going to be amazing, but I've not seen a great deal of impact in a lot of the groups. It's unfortunately when they took away, because if people don't engage with the LinkedIn group, they don't see the content on their newsfeed, it kind of gets affected by the algorithm as well. So I think if it's a really active group involving a niche audience, then yes, it could have value. The key thing is it active? If it's not active, then probably isn't much value. But the other thing I would say about groups is the best thing about them is if you join a group, you can then message every member of that group, whether you are first, second, or third degree connection. That for me is the best thing about groups anyway, and worth joining for that reason. And finally, Jackie's asked, have you noticed something strange, not in the neighborhood, happening with LinkedIn algorithms? Different people in my feed she's seeing, and my engagement rate is not as good as before, but she's not doing anything different. The LinkedIn algorithm is changing all the time, so much stuff going on with the LinkedIn algorithm. So, and I think dwell time, the engagement levels. I mean, I must admit, with my own feed, I'm seeing different people coming up, but generally what I'm seeing is the people who were in my local business community have disappeared, and the people that are appearing are people who are doing LinkedIn well. I am guessing that probably more about people who are in digital marketing appearing in my feed, because they know they understand the algorithm, they've done the research, they've done training, they've looked into it, and therefore then they're appearing higher. So I think it's probably down to maybe a need for more knowledge of how the algorithm works to get your post be seen by more people, and then it's about deleting or asking not to see the posts of those people who you don't want to see on your LinkedIn newsfeed anymore. So that's questions from that were there before. What we've got now, we've got one from Kat. Any questions? Give us some questions for Hugo. We can't sit here not earning his money. So Kat said, when inviting connections to follow a company page, is there any way to reorganize the list that is generated? Oh, if only it was. That is generated of people to invite for me, showing very old connections which are not so relevant. Yeah, I have the same problem, Kat. I also have the same people come up at the top of the list. It's really time consuming. And no, I don't think there is any way of organizing it, really annoyingly. Anybody else got any questions for Hugo? I've got one for you, Hugo, just so you do actually earn your money. Hugo, with the thing about no follow links on guest blogs, are you saying, so somebody say if we write somebody does a guest blog for our website, is it better practice for us not to have a do follow link on there? And if so, when would you do a do follow and when would you do a don't follow?
Yeah, I think it's okay to include followed links to people, especially if they're adding value to your site. I think what Google is really saying with this is that if you're kind of the kind of website where you're publishing loads of guest posts every day, and a lot of these guest posts are kind of low quality, then that's when you should have a no follow attribute. I think they also say it's like for every website, but I think as long as the person is adding value, then it's kind of up to the discretion of the publisher themselves. And Google isn't going to look at your website unfavorably if you're not following your links. I think it's absolutely fine for you to do that. And Google, with the no follow attributes, isn't saying as well that it won't ever crawl or use that link as a ranking factor. Google has come out and said that it looks at it as a hint. So it's kind of there to basically, it's there for websites who are kind of uncertain about whether they want to include any kind of value to the people they're mentioning. But if you do feel confident about the people you're hosting on your site and you're confident about their authority in the space, then definitely include a followed link. I think that's absolutely fine.
Great. Lisby has asked Hugo a question. Is a paid for Google shop a prerequisite for the free organic one?
Was that whether you need to have paid campaigns for the organic? Yep, I think it's absolutely fine not to have any paid campaigns. As long as you have a Google Merchant Center account, you can set up the free listings essentially. So all you need to do is upload your product feed, which is a list of the products that you offer. And then you'll have the images that you've attached to those products as well. And then Google will do the rest and, choose the products that you've mentioned and whether they're legible to be shown in the organic section of Google Shopping. You don't need to have a paid campaign to be eligible for that. It's kind of separate. So the only prerequisite is to have that Google Merchant Center account.
Great. And last question, Hugo, reference CLS. This is from Michelle. I didn't quite understand regarding the content moving. Do you mean between devices, how the layout changes?
Yeah, so that's about how the layout changes itself. So what you might see sometimes on websites when you've loaded them in or when you've clicked onto them, is that they haven't fully loaded in yet. And depending on how quick the website is, sometimes you'll get the content loaded in first and then the imagery loaded in after, or you might have things like the navigation loaded in a second or two after the content, things like that. It's just based on how the code actually is written in terms of the hierarchy of it. So what CLS is about, or sorry, what the kind of content shifting is about, is how much the content moves after the user has actually landed on the page. So Google was able to actually see the kind of work out the ratio of that. In terms of the calculation it makes, it's two things. So it's how much the content moves down the page. So say you had a piece of content that occupied 50% of what someone saw on the page above the fold, and then after the content shifted, it occupied, it moved down by 25%. That kind of score it basically says it occupies, or it moves 75% of the page. And then it also looks at kind of how much content actually physically shifted as well. So it kind of works out a score based on those two different things, how much it moved and how big the thing that moved was, to basically work out a percentage, and then attribute a score to that. So yeah, definitely look in Google Search Console to see what score your pages are getting. Generally, they say your score should be around 0.1, so it's on a scale of 0 to 1. 0.1 is the shifting score that they say you should aim for, and it's definitely manageable for many sites. If your content is quick and your page isn't full of poorly written code, then it will likely be okay. But definitely look at it for your website, because it might be that certain pages aren't like that.
Great, thank you, Hugo. Thanks everyone for joining us. The survey form is still on there on the chat. Please fill in before you leave. This broadcast will also be available on YouTube to watch later on, so if you want to go back over it again or share it with anybody, that'd be really useful. But thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really great to see you all, and we'll hopefully talk to you all soon in the future. Thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.